Okay, please stand and cover yourselves for the reading of the scriptures. Now, this is not law. It's what we do by tradition. If you can't stand, for instance, like tethered to wires and cannot do so, then no one's committing a sin here. It's just something we do to show respect. Anyway, I'm going to read the Hebrew text from chapter 5 of Vayikra, which is also known as Leviticus, because that's where we are today. So verse 1 begins, V'nefesh ki teheta v'shama kol ala v'hu ed a roa o yadaim lo yagid v'nasa avono o nefesh asher tiga bechol davar tameh o v'nivlat Haya tame o be nivlat behema tame o be nivlat sheretz tame venelam mimenu ve. Oh, that's weird. Vehu tame ve'ashem o chi yiga betumat adam lechol tumat asher yitma ba Vene lam mimenu vehu yada ve'ashem o nefesh ki ti shala levate vi sepatarim lehara o lehetiv lechol asher yevate ha'adam besh Vua ve'nelam mimenu ve'hu yada ve'ashem le'achat me'ele ve'haya chi yesham le'achat me'ele ve'chit vada asher chata aleha ve'hevi et ashamo la Yahweh al chatato asher Hata nekeva min hazon kisba o siirat izim lechatat vechiper alav hakohen mechatato. Ve'im lo tegi yado de se vehevi et ashamo asher hato she te rorim o shene B'nei Yona la Yahweh, echad lechatat, v'echad le'olah, v'hevi otam el hakohen, v'hi keriv et asher la chatot rishona umalak et rosho, mimul arpo, velo yavidil, Vehiza midam hachatat al-kir hamitzbeach vehenish ar badam yimatze el yesod hamizbeach chatat hu. Ve'et ha-sheni ya'ase ola kamishpat vehiper alav hakohen me Chatota, or Hatato rather, Asher Hata Venis Lachlo, Ve'im Lo Ti Tasig, Yado Li Shete, Rorim O Lishne, B'nei Yona, Vehevi et Karbano, Asher Hata Asi, Rit Ha'efe, Efa, Solet le chatat lo yasim aleha shemen velo yiten aleha levona ki chatahi vehevia el hakohen vekamatz hakohen mimena melo kumzo et az karata vehike Tir ha-mizbeach al ishe Yahweh chatat hiv vechiper alav hakohen al chatato asher chata me'achat me'ele venislach lo vehaita לכהן כמנחה. וידבר יהוה אל משה לאמור, נפש כי תמעול מעל וחטאה בשגגה מקדשי יהוה, והביא את שמו ליהוה, אגיל תמים מן הזון בערכך כסף שקלים בשקל הקודש לאשם, ואת אשר חטא מן הקודש ישלם, ואת חמישיתו יוסף עליו ונתן אותו לכהן, והכהן יכפר עליו באל האשם ונסלח לו. ואם נפש כי תחטא ועשתה אחת מכל מצוות יהוה אשר לא תעשנה ולא ידע, ואשם ונשא עוונו, והביא איל תמים מן הזון בערכך לאשם אל הכהן, וכיפר עליו הכהן על שגגתו אשר שגג, והוא לא ידע ונסלח לו. אשם הוא אשם ליהוה. וידבר יהוה אל משה לאמור, נפש כי תחטא מעל ביהוה, וכיחש בעמיתו בפיקדון, או ותשומת יד או וגזל, או אשך עמיתו, או מזע אבדה, וכיחש בא ונשבע על שקר על אחת מכל אשר יעשה האדם לחטוא והנה. והיה כי יחטא ואשם, והשיב את הגזלה אשר גזל, או את העושך אשר אשך, או את הפיקדון אשר הפקד אותו, או את העובדה אשר מצא, או מכל אשר ישבע עליו לשקר, ושילם אותו בראשו, וחמישיתיו יוסף עליו, לאשר הוא לא יתננו ביום אשר אשמתו, ואת אשמו יביל ליהוה איל תמים מן הזון בערכך לאשם אל הכהן, וכיפר עליו הכהן לפני יהוה, ונסלח לו על אחת מכל אשר יעשה לאשמה בה. You may be seated. Whoa. Seems like it's been a long time since we had a long reading like that. Whew.
Okay, now you got it.
I don't care. Ooh, I wasn't reading part of the next chapter. Okay, just so y'all know at the outset on this one, this is another one of those things where the English Bible breaks up the chapter in the wrong place, and we always go by the Hebrew Bible. So what we're doing is correct, not incorrect. All right. Verse 1 would basically in English translate, and soul for shall sin, and hear voice, oath, and he witness, or saw, or know, if not he know, and will bear guilt he. So it's one of those that could be a little confusing, but for some of you, this stuff may be getting to where it's not confusing anymore, because once you get used to reading it this way, and because it's just like the Hebrew, the reason why I do it this way is so that it makes it easier for you to learn Hebrew. Instead of saying, and God said to Moses, it'll be, and he said, God, to Moshe. What? So anyway, I say it the way it's written, the way you would say it in Hebrew. It's a little different than English, and that I think will help for those of you who are actually trying to learn Hebrew. It will help you to learn to think that way. You got to think, and he said, instead of, and God said, right? You need to learn to say it correctly, so you need to hear it correctly. Anyway, it starts off with ve nefesh, and soul. This is the breath of life. It's the exhale of breath and all that. But basically what they're talking about is the part of you that lives on after you die. And we have this, there is still a connection to this in the English language to this day, where they talk about how many people are on an aircraft. When an aircraft goes down, they'll say there were 130 souls on board, right? That's exactly what's happening here. They're talking about if a person. So it's because that's really the real you. So that's the way they used to say it, and eventually we replaced the word soul with the word person. So your Bibles will probably say person, but I'm sticking with soul because that's what the Hebrew text actually is talking about. But you can think of it that way if you like. Then it says ki. The ki is the Hebrew word that means if. It's sometimes interrogatory. But it's also the Hebrew word for the word for. Think of a sentence with the word for in it. Will you stay with me for a while? Right? It's not the number, it's the word for. And it's also the word because. And in this case, I'm going to use the English word because. And you'll see why here soon enough. Then it says techeta. Well, that's your word for sin, right? And we have to always talk about this because I don't know who's coming in and when they're coming into this. I don't think that everybody's going to go to our website and start with Exodus chapter 12, verse 1, because that's where the law starts. It does not start with God telling man that he must be fruitful and multiply. The reason why that's in there is because Maimonides was trying to come up with 613 laws. He was studying to prove that which he already believed. He was trying to make it work, and he couldn't come up with enough laws in the law because he was ignoring half of them, and then the others he was repeating. He was still, in spite of everything that he did, the way he put it together is not bad, especially for somebody who didn't speak Hebrew and somebody who had no computer. If he'd had a computer, he would probably have realized he was just repeating some laws, and he probably would have noticed that he was missing some laws, if you know what I'm saying. I think he would have done an even better job had he have had that technology in his hands, but he didn't. And the whole reason to do it, I'm still struggling with whether that should be done or not, but it is what it is. Anyway, so that law doesn't start there. It starts in Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. And I know that's not a law, but that's where the law starts, okay? It's going to lead you into the law, right? So I don't think people are going to go to that verse there and work their way up and try to catch up with us. This is hours and hours and hundreds of hours of videos just to get to here. So I don't know when they're going to jump in, which is why I repeat myself so very much, because maybe they start right here and they never heard me teach about this before. But you guys listening already know that. It's the newbies that don't. So anyway, let's talk about what law is and what law is not. Because man has decided to make their own law. It's from the very beginning. I mean, the very beginning. God puts the two people, well, if you buy in that, God puts two people in a garden. Because the word he's using is not a man's name. It doesn't say, it only at the end talks about Adam and Chava, the Chava. That's the girl's name, Chava, not Eve. I have no idea where Eve came from. There is no Adam and Eve. There was an Adam, which you can hear Adam out of, and there was a Chava. And that's from the same word that we get l'chaim when we cheer. It's from life, right? But he doesn't talk about them. Mostly he's talking, I mean, he does a couple of times there toward the end, but for the most part, it's only talking about Adam. And Adam is not a man's name. It's the word for mankind. The word for mankind. Mankind. When God created mankind. Let's just say for kicks and grins here that he only had these two people and that everybody came from the same two people, and somehow that didn't make us a bunch of inbred hillbillies with 3 ears on our head and 2 eyeballs here, on the sides of our heads and one in the middle. I mean, because that's what pretty much would have happened if we'd have survived at all. But anywho, let's just say it's just two people. And we get in here and God says to the man, whatever you do, you can eat from that tree over there, but you can't eat from that tree over there. And so that man says, well, God's law is not good enough for me. I'm going to make up my own law. So he tells his wife, hey, wife, you know what? You can eat from this tree over here all you want, but over here, don't you dare touch that tree. That's your first fence around Torah. And you know what? What it should have taught us? It should have taught us that a fence around Torah doesn't work. Why? Because they broke God's law and they broke man's law. Just saying. If they're going to break God's law, how much more are they going to break man's law? But we've been doing it from the very beginning. From the very beginning. It's just always doing it. I always got to make our own little laws. So let's talk about what sin is and what sin is not. Now, I'm going to steal this from the New Testament. And the Jews are, what? Well, because we know it as the New Testament, and as Jews, our whole entire lives, Jews have been told, bad, New Testament, bad, Christians, bad. Come on now. The New Testament was written by the letters that are put together and called the New Testament. They were all letters written by Jewish rabbis to other Jewish rabbis concerning matters of the Jewish religion. That much I wish everybody knew, because it would help us to understand these letters are Jewish, not Christian. There were no Christians at this time. But this Jewish man, his name was Yosef ben Zakkai, and I think he's the same one that wrote the Mishnah. It's very highly probable at this point in my mind, but let's say he didn't. It was maybe his son. It was Joseph ben Zakkai Jr. They had been juniors back then, just saying. But anyway, this Yochanan, rather, not Joseph. I got the wrong name. I'm going to get hammered on that one. Yosef. God, why do I have Yosef in my head? Yochanan ben Zakkai. Okay, anyway, this guy, he writes this letter to somebody. I don't know who he wrote it to, but in that letter, it's called 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. So you just leave out the number 2 and you got it. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. 1 John chapter 3. Trying to make all that show up in the screen there. It says, and this is my rendering of the actual text, everyone who commits sin is also in rebellion of the Torah. Now, he's trying to lay this out. It clarifies something because somebody has gone wrong in their thinking. He said, everyone who commits sin is also in rebellion of the Torah. Now, the English Bibles tend to say, English Bibles, that's the right word. They tend to say that everyone who commits sin is in rebellion of the law. What's the law in this world in this time? It's the Torah. They are talking about the Torah. They even use the Greek word that the translators used for Torah right here in this verse, right? Nomos. It's the Torah. So everyone who commits sin is also in rebellion of the Torah, because he's going to sum it all up in this statement. Sin is Torah rebellion. Sin is Torah rebellion. Wow. That is, you can't get it any clearer than this. You can't get it more concise than this. Is it a sin to smoke cigarettes? No. How do you know that? Because the Torah doesn't say it is. The Torah doesn't say, thou shalt not smoke cigarettes. Don't do it. Is it a sin to drink? No. The Torah does not say, thou shalt not drink. In fact, the Bible says, give them strong drink for their misery. Yeah, so those of you who are so proud of yourself for not giving people money because you know all they're going to do is go buy liquor, shame on you. Shame on you. That was a sin. That was a sin. Because the Bible says, give them strong drink for their misery. Look it up. I think you can find it. It's not very hard to find. Oh, whoa, I did something weird. Don't know what I did. That was so weird, but I did something weird. Did something weird, yeah. I can't make it go away. Well, I thought it was going to go away. I guess not. Anyway, so we're talking about sin. Sin is real simple. If the Torah says to do it, and it does tell us a bunch of things that we do. We're going to love God with all our heart and soul and strength. Well, we better get after that. But that's not actually a good example, because it's just telling you God's going to win your heart so thoroughly that you will love him with all your heart, soul, and strength. That's really not something you would do. But it tells you to do things, and it tells you not to do things. Thou shalt not. You won't commit adultery. You won't kill people. Thou shalt help your neighbor get his ox out of the ditch. I hate it when people tell me that's legalism and bondage. No, it's not. It's basic human kindness. Anyway, so if it says to do it and you don't, that is sin. If it tells you not to do it and you do, that is sin. So does it make any difference how offended you are by something that somebody does? Not thinking of any examples off the top of my head, but people are offended by all kinds of things. You know, you say this or say that or think this and think that, and everybody's offended. Why? Anyway, let's not get into politics. That'd be a really bad idea. So we know what sin is and we know what it isn't, right? Because that sums it up thoroughly. So then our next word is veshamah. Shama. I haven't talked about this in a while. Did you know it's three things in Hebrew? It's to hear with your physical ear. It's to understand it with your whole heart and mind. Because in Hebrew, your heart, your mind, your soul, what are some other words we could use? Spirit. All of those things are one thing. All of them are one thing. Your heart cannot say yes and your mind say no in Hebrew, because that's schizophrenia in Hebrew. Because all of that is one thing. It's just one thing. So you have to understand it with your whole heart and mind. And then you have to act upon what you heard. So in the example I like to use, because it's so simple, is if I sit here and I say, hey, I am thirsty, and there's 10 people in the room and nobody does anything, nobody says anything, there is no reaction from that crowd, no action from that crowd, not necessarily reaction, though that word could be used. Nobody heard me. Nobody heard a word. Not one word. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? Because to hear in the Bible is to do all of those things. All of those things. You have to hear it with your ears. You have to understand it with your whole heart and mind. And then you have to act upon it. So everybody in this room, you know, one thing that everybody could do is say, well, get off your lazy butt and get yourself something to drink. That would be an action. That would prove, that's proof positive that you heard and you understood and you acted upon it. So it's why it's always connected to the idea of obedience, and it's never separated from that idea, because those are the things that are necessary for you to obey. So half the time you're reading the word obey in your English Bible, it came from this word Shema. And the other half of the time, it's going to be the word hear. Hear Yisrael, right? It's more than just hear. It's hear it with your ears. Understand it with your whole heart and mind, and do something about it. So that the next time you say the Shema, think about what you could do to prove to God that you heard what you said when you spoke the Shema. That's what we call it, the Shema. When we say, "Hear Israel, the Lord our God is one," blah, blah, blah. Think about what you can do to show God that you've actually heard those words. Then the next word is kol. Kol is the word for voice. It's to give a voice to something. It's more about the sound than anything. But it's the crying of an animal. It's the whisper in a wind. It's even of things that are not articulated, groans, if you will, and just sounds that are made. Because you can say something, I can say, and I'm saying, what? Without saying the word. That's what kol is all about. This is Allah. And this is one of those sound-alike words, but this is an oath. It's to enter into an oath, to bind oneself to an oath, a covenant confirmed by an oath, right? O-A-T-H, oath. So make sure you understand what I'm saying. It says vehu, which literally means and he, or maybe and it. If we're talking about the oath, then we'll probably translate it instead of he. Follow what I'm saying? Then it's the word ed. How many people named Ed do you know in your life? Yeah, that's the Hebrew word. It means witness, to give a testimony, to testify. Ed. You know a Hebrew word and didn't even know it. How about the next word? O. We would probably spell it O-H. Sometimes it's spelled just with an O in the Bible. I've never seen it spelled that way anywhere else in the English Bible. But it's or. This or that. It's that simple. It's going to show up a lot in this chapter, but it just means or. Then we have ra'ah. It's to see. Literally, it's, you open your eyeballs and you see something. A blind person couldn't do this, but a not blind person could. This is to physically see something with your eyeballs, right? But it's also to be seen is used that way. To be taught in visions, right? If God gives you a vision and you understand that vision, and not all God-given visions are understood by the person to whom the vision was given, but there are times when the person to whom it was given did in fact understand it. Most of the time it wasn't, though. It's the other way. Somebody else had to interpret, right? That's why you have Star says that's why you have interpreters. It's not really true. The reason why you have interpreters is because they're translating from one language to another. That's a Bible interpreter. Then we have the word O again. So it's or yada. So if you saw it, or this is to perceive, to acquire knowledge, to become acquainted with something. You follow what I'm saying? So if you see or if you perceive, you don't have to see something to perceive something. Somebody says this and another guy says that, and you put two and two together and, I see what's going on, right? But you don't actually see it. You perceive it. That's how you need to see the use of the word here in this verse. This is im. Now that's our word, which is if, lo, behold, truly, certainly, a demonstrative interrogative in a conditional particle. Does that help? I put that in there because it makes me laugh every time I read it. Anyway, I have that in my database. Lo is the negative article, so that's not. This is yagid. To be in front, to be in sight, hence to be manifest, to be clear. So now it's of the clarity, right? This is venasa. That's from asa, to take up, to lift up, to express the idea of raising up, bearing up, to lift up the hand, to swear an oath, we also very often translate this word as do or make, but it's from the idea of lifting up, to stand up from a seated position, to get up from the bed. These are the ways that this word is used. But to lift up a command, like say if God says to go build this ark, they lifted up that command. And so they're going to use the word asa. You'll find it that's why it says, so go make. In English, you'll say, and they made whatever they were told to make. So it's the same word, just many uses. Then we have avono, that's literally guilt, he. They say perversity, depravity, a depraved action, a crime, a sin, right? But we got to think of this in the English world as this is the guilt that is now upon us from committing that sin. So let's say God said that we had to eat leavened bread during Matzot, right? And we all know that we're supposed to do that. Well, we're supposed to eat the unleavened bread. I knew I said that wrong, because what I meant to say was we're not supposed to eat the leavened bread. That's what I meant to say. So, but you know what happens? You get hungry, you're busy, you're in a rush, you stop into the McDonald's or wherever, Burger Chef or whatever you're going to, and you go to this place and you order a hamburger and it's in your mouth before you realize it's still matzot, dude. I did this once. It's a real world thing for me. I stuck that thing in my mouth. I took a bite. Before I even chewed on it, I realized that I wasn't supposed to have this. So I had two choices. I can either say, well, I messed up. It's too late. I'm just going to chew it and eat it and suffer the consequences of my sin. I could have done that, which would have just been adding sin upon sin. Or what I actually did, spit it out into a napkin, try to make sure nobody saw me do that. I didn't want anyone getting offended thinking that I didn't like their hamburger. And I spit it into there. The deed was done, right? And so from that moment until the end of Matzot, I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody because I was unclean. So did that mean since I was unclean, I could go and commit a bunch more sin? No. That doesn't make it okay for you to eat hamburgers, 3 times a day for the rest of the week, or donuts or whatever. No. That's adding sin on top of sin when you do something like that. I committed the sin, and my punishment was I couldn't be around the people that I love and adore and think so highly of. All of you guys listening in, you know that how I feel about that. You're all my kids. Wouldn't make any difference if you were older, like with Rich from New York. Well, at least one of them. Man, he's old enough to be my great granddad. I mean, wow, he is old, but he's still one of my kids because I'm his rabbi. That's my love for you, Rich. I better get on to the translation. So my translation is, and because the soul shall sin, because it will sin. Remember that from the very beginning, instead of saying if. No, there's no question here. You're going to sin. Everybody's going to sin and fall short of the glory of God. Where have I heard that? I read that somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, so, and because the soul shall sin and is Torah observant, it said, remember, obeys the voice of his oath. It's an idiom. In what oath would they be talking about? Well, God's given the law. They're not talking about your marriage oath. They're not talking about some oath you have to pay off the mortgage on your house. That's an oath, people. It's not about the oath on paying off your car. That's an oath. That's an oath. All of them are. But that's not the one he's talking about, is it? He's given the law. He's talking about the law. The law is the oath. So he's talking about people who are Torah observant are going to sin. And because they do, then what does it say? So, and because the soul shall sin and is Torah observant, and for some reason, it could be for any reason, that's those words, testifies or will see or will perceive, and it is not clear, and he bears guilt. Most biblical commentators see the words witness, see, and know as three different talking points, which is not conducive to biblical Hebrew. It's not conducive to biblical Hebrew thought or writing style. It doesn't belong there. Nachmanides actually wrote that these three things were all the same thing. Though on the right track, he was still not quite right. The words or between the three actions is the giveaway. In English, it would be a choice between the three so-called choices. However, in biblical Hebrew, it is an idiomatic way of saying anything. So what's going on here? They're saying that because a soul who is Torah observant will commit a sin for whatever reason, for some reason, the testimony, the seeing it, the perceiving it is not clear to him. He doesn't know he's committed a sin. He's just committed a sin. It was inadvertent. It wasn't on purpose. This is what we're talking about. And what does it say? He's still guilty. He's still guilty. He's still guilty. That's what the point is. So, the ignorance of the law is no excuse. That's what was just said. All right, so in verse 2, I better check my time. I don't know how far I am. It says, or soul that touch in all word unclean, or and dead body living unclean, or and dead body livestock unclean, and dead body creature unclean, and be concealed from us, and he unclean and guilty. Not as hard to understand as you might think. Starts off with the O, so here's the or. So in other words, the last verse was not a complete sentence in Hebrew. It was only the beginning of it. This is a continuation of the same sentence. So it's or, nefesh, or a soul, the person, asher, tigah. Tigah is to touch. It's to reach out and touch something, right? It's to be touched by something. It's someone that bumps into you. They touched you. It's exactly what we think of the English word touch. Any way we could use it, that's the way it was used. Tigah was used, or is used in Hebrew. I should say was, because I don't know what they do in modern anymore. Anymore wasn't the right word. I've spent all my time mastering the Bible version of Hebrew, not the modern, though I am sort of trying to learn the modern, so I don't know what they do in modern. Anyway, mechol, which is in all, davar, that's a word, tameh, unclean. Do you guys remember this saying, an unclean word? Do you remember that earlier from the law? That's exactly what's happening here. It's the same idiom. It's an idiom. So I'm not going to go too much into what does it mean, but we're talking about an unclean word being an idiom. Keep that in mind. To be unclean is impure. It says in a Levitical sense as to persons, animals, and things. In a moral sense, according to the laws contained in the Torah, polluted of name, infamous. I don't know. I'm going to have to give that I'm going to have to tweak the meaning on that because it's not really getting the point across. If you commit a sin, if God said to wear a fringe and you don't, you're unclean. You're unclean. It's the violation of God's law that makes you unclean. It is not the blood of a dead person. It is not the blood of a dead animal that makes you unclean. It is the violation of God's law that makes you unclean. And God's law says don't touch the blood of another person. And that's not quite what you think it is. And we're going to find that out in this chapter, that he's going to make some specifics here that we need to know. Because it is okay to touch a dead animal in some cases. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're slaughtering a lamb for the Passover. Does that mean that the person who slaughtered the lamb, which should be, technically you? Every year you can't talk to anybody? You see what I'm saying? Because if touching the blood of a dead animal makes you unclean, then you got a problem here, right? And we're going to see that in this very chapter. It clarifies that there is blood that can be touched of a dead animal and even of a person. What if you touch your loved one? There is some impurity there, but it's not quite what we think. We'll pick that up on the way. Now the next word is O again, so it's or. So it's the unclean word, or it says venivlat, and dead body. It's a corpse. It's really the word for our word corpse and corpse. So if you touch an unclean word, or it's a dead body. What's funny, it says a dead body living. A dead body living. How does a dead body live? A dead body cannot live, right? Frankenstein's not real. Just saying. So it's got to be what? An idiom. Anyway, then it says unclean. Or benivlat, dead body, behema, of the livestock. So it could be dead stock of livestock, dead body of a livestock, a dead animal. Unclean, wait a minute, what was before that? Livestock that is unclean. Or benivlat, the dead body, sheretz. Sheretz, that's creature. Reptiles, bats, things that walk on 4 feet, smaller aquatic animals, all of those this word is used for. So for those who are trying to make the word living connect to creatures, you got a problem here. He's not going to tell you, say it one way and then say it another. These are two different things. So if you're touching the dead body of things that are called creatures and becomes unclean, then nimla, and it's concealed. Then it says from us. Mimenu, from us. This word from us, it's 2 words connected together. And the first one is mean. And that's to a part that's taken from a whole. So you take something from something. If I cut up a pie and I take a piece from that pie, I have taken a part from the whole. But when olam, this word that preceded it, the concealed, to be hidden, it says in the grammar rules right here, when olam is followed by mean, which it is of a person from whom anything is hidden. In other words, he is unaware that he has committed the sin. This is why the tradition of a man not extending his hand to a woman unless she first extended her hand used to be a thing. I was raised that way. I was taught to never extend my hand to a woman unless she had extended her hand first, because women bleed once a month, and back in the day, to let you know that she was unclean, she would not stretch out her hand to a man. This was proper etiquette when I was growing up. And even as a young man, it was still proper etiquette. And so women, to this day, I don't stretch out my hand to a woman unless she has reached out to me first. And some of them get upset with me. Because, anyway. But this is why. Because if she was unclean, she wouldn't stretch out her hand, and you knew not to stretch out your hand to her, because the belief was that her uncleanness could somehow pass to you. That was the belief. I'm losing my voice again. It says, Vehu, and it, or he, that it says tame, becomes unclean, it becomes impure. Ve'asham, or Hashem rather, and guilty. So if you're impure, you're guilty. You're guilty of breaking this law. So if the woman was unclean and she stretched out her hand and you shook her hand, you just became guilty of sin. But you don't know that you have unless she tells you afterwards, right? You have no. How would you know that? Okay, let's be pragmatic here. You wouldn't know, and that's what we're talking about: is the sin that you don't know that you've become guilty of, but you are guilty because you are unclean. So my translation then is, or a soul, because remember it's continuing on from the previous. Or a soul breaks his covenant. Remember the words were, touches any unclean word. That's an idiom that means to break your covenant is to touch an unclean word. So if a man had married a woman and he found an unclean word in her, which is what it says, this uses this very same terminology. It means that she has broken her covenant. And he has the right to divorce a woman if she's broken her covenant. But if it's true for the man in Hebrew and their culture of the Bible, then it was also true of the woman. If she found that unclean word in that man, she could also divorce that man. There is plenty of evidence from the first century documentation that we have now that shows that women, Jewish women in particular, were free to divorce their men for these reasons and did so. It exists in abundance, so we know it's true. So if he breaks his covenant, or the oozing, raw, or dead part of the living, and it said corpse, unclean, living, or a dead carcass among the unclean livestock, or a dead carcass of the unclean creature, and it be unknown to him, it's hidden from us, he is unclean and guilty. See where we're going with this? Onkelos by Drauzine and Wagner. Oh, you guys can't see that. Oh, yeah, you can. Set of books right here. Kind of purpley looking. It states human uncleanness. This includes one who comes in contact with a corpse and the unclean item in chapter 15. A man who is unclean by virtue of a bodily discharge, a menstruant, or a woman with another bodily discharge. And they're getting that from Ibn Ezra and Rashi. I'm going to sit here and disagree with that. You cannot pass your uncleanness to somebody else, because if you could, then if you murder somebody and you touch your best friend, that best friend murdered somebody too. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. If it's true of one law, then it's true of all the laws. I'm just saying. That doesn't happen. Now, if that person has the blood in their hands and they touch you, because it's the blood that makes you unclean, not the person. Anyway. Raw, boy, you have to base that on other than that flimsy little excuse. Well, it's pretty simple. When Moshe was giving the law, they're in the middle of all of this. He's giving the law. They're getting ready to celebrate the Passover for the second time. A couple of guys walk into the camp, the place where nothing unclean was allowed to be, right? They walk into the camp and they tell Moshe, Moshe, we've been made unclean by a dead body. Okay, so now Moshe and nobody in that camp can celebrate Passover. They had to just kick it out. No. And what Moshe did was he said, well, let me go ask God, because he didn't know the answer to their question. Because their question was, we are unclean. We're guilty of the sin. We broke God's law. We touched an unclean body. So what's to stop us, they said, from celebrating the Passover? And so he goes and he asks God about it, and God gives him his answer, and he comes back and he says, you have to celebrate the Passover. Doesn't make any difference if you ate that, you bit into that hamburger and you spit it out. You're still guilty. But you still have to celebrate the Passover. So that you have to celebrate the matzot. You have to do these things regardless. You can't just go on and sin. So these men, by coming into that camp, did not make other people unclean. We don't know who they touched or didn't, or if they touched or didn't. We don't know any of that. And to say that they didn't is speculative. We're just saying it because we're trying to prove that which we already believe. We already believe that, well, if we touch, then it makes them unclean. So obviously these people didn't touch. No, we don't know that. All we know is when we sin, it's not a license to keep sinning. We're just guilty. That's all that we're learning today is about the guilt. So I've actually run out of time. We'll be able to move on to verse 3. But that's all I can think of to say about this today. There's some good stuff coming. Oh, you're going to love this chapter. Because we're going to get into what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. It's going to be clarified in this chapter, and it's going to surprise you. It's going to excite you too. You're going to say, that makes sense? That's obviously right, because it's coming right out of the Bible. It's got to be right. Because I didn't write this stuff. I'm just telling you what it says. That's all my job is. But you're going to be excited about it. I'm really excited about it. Can't wait to get to it. But anywho, that's as far as I can take you this week. So, shalom, y'all.